Salutations everyone, this is Razor giving you guys another Overwatch video where today we're going to be talking about tanks, and more specifically shield tanks. Shield tanks are super important outside of, King of the Hill or maybe some first point of hybrid maps. And obviously there's little bit of caveats because almost anything works in matchmaking at least 5% of the time randomly, just because things are so random and players don't just play very well together from bronze all the way to top 500. But shield tanks are, outside of those rare circumstances, always going to be needed, and they're very, very useful because while a healer is awesome, you could recover damage that you've taken. It's even better if you don't take that damage at all, and that's what shield tanks can provide. Reinhardt has his shield that he can throw up. Winston has his bubble that he can toss down in a closed space, and Orisa can throw up her barrier quite often, as well as fortify when that goes down, and hopefully get another barrier, so she can block the most damage out of anybody in the game. And Reinhardt obviously has that huge shield, mobile, moves along with him, so he has that going ahead of him instead of Orisa. But with Winston not being very good in matchmaking play, because Winston needs communication, if people want to run dive, which a lot of people say that they do, they end up not diving. They picked a dive comp, but they don't dive. So the Winston's landing doesn't get covered by the Diva's defense matrix, and people don't follow up with the Winston. The Genji doesn't follow up and slash and get that kill on that support that Winston dived, or Tracer doesn't go in, or McCree doesn't finish up. Whatever DPS that you got, whatever healers that you have, a Moira could just fade in there and probably finish somebody off, even though that's probably not what you want to do. It's something that can definitely work in matchmaking. That kind of just leaves it to Rein and Orisa, and I've mentioned before, Orisa is the best shield tank in matchmaking because she can just block more damage than Reinhardt. Reinhardt, while it's not as bad as Winston in need of communication, Reinhardt benefits a lot from speed boost. That's how you get all the big value out of Rein, is with speed boost. And if you pocket him, he can be way more deadly than a pocketed Winston or a pocketed Orisa, because he can just get in there, flail the hammer, tons of damage, get his ult pretty darn quick, and his ult is way more useful than Orisa's pitiful excuse for an ultimate ever could be. So Rein, in the right circumstances, this isn't how you want to play Rein. You don't want to play an aggressive Rein, but sometimes you kind of need to take the initiative if your team is, a bunch of Genji mains, as, things tend to go, or, Hanzo no tricks, or Symmetra no tricks, or Torb no tricks. The weaknesses that Rein has are much more easily exploited than Orisa, because she can throw out her shield a lot more often, and she can fortify to survive once that shield is not available to her, as well as being able to halt people away from approaching her. We know that Orisa is pretty useless if you just walk through her shield, which is something really easy to do, but people are so scared to really make a move in any point in matchmaking that she definitely works, and is by far the most useful and powerful shield tank in matchmaking. At least up until Masters level of play, where you'll see more Winstons and more communication, or at the very least synergy. People know what they should be doing, even if there isn't communication. More people know what they should be doing with their tank picks than at the lower levels of Diamond and below. So Rein and Orisa aren't in a very good place, and a lot of this has to do with, the meta shifts and changes in a way that things are. Obviously, nobody wants triple tank to come back. That was the most boring and least fun meta that we have had, and nobody wants that to come back. You don't want to buff Ana too much, even though she's not in a very good place right now at any level. But, people and Blizzard were very worried that with the advent of Moira, that triple and quad tanks were going to become a big thing. So they took precautionary steps in buffing two characters that are really good against tanks, Reaper and Mei. Mei can freeze somebody down. If Reinhardt's frozen, he can't have his shield up. If Winston's frozen, he's not leaping. If Zarya's frozen, she can't bubble anybody. If Diva's frozen, it's really easy to do because Defense Matrix can't block that. So, you know, Mei has her abilities, and now she can, you know, freeze more tanks because her Cryoblast goes through people, so she can freeze multiple targets, and now can freeze them faster as well, which I don't think was as big as a problem as Blizzard made it out to be. But another character that they buffed was Reaper, the tank shredder, the dude that does a ton of up close, easy to do and easy to deal damage, as well as not needing anybody to pocket him because he heals as he damages. As well as giving him a faster Wraith form and the ability to cancel out of Wraith, so you can take out 2 tanks without ever having to reload, you know, if you have a little bit of support. So they took those steps because they didn't want triple and quad tank to be a thing. A lot of people across everywhere thought that triple and quad tank was going to be a thing, but as we've seen in matchmaking and in Overwatch League, that really hasn't happened. We've only seen triple tank a little bit, and they weren't very overwhelming, just good plays by those teams. So it is a strategy that you can pull off and is something that is actually quite easy to do effectively in matchmaking. But it's all about, you know, getting 3 people to pick a tank in matchmaking. That's near impossible because everybody's a Genji main and a Torb no trick and a Symmetra no trick and a Hanzo no trick. So that's really the only difficult part about running triple tank in matchmaking, is getting 3 people to pick tank as well as getting 1 or 2 people to pick healer, with DPS being the most popular thing in the world. And this is a DPS meta right now. They also nerfed D.Va, which hurts, you know, all tanks as a whole, but especially her, obviously. So she's a bit more vulnerable now because she's not going to be able to do as much damage. So if they nerf D.Va any more than they already have, I think she's still fine. I think she's still going to be used, you know, in the Overwatch League. Maybe not as high of a pick rate as she is right now, since she is the most picked. And I think Blizzard's taking the pick rate of characters into account a little bit too much, because it's not like it's not like League of Legends where there's like 200 characters to choose from. If one of those 200 characters had like an 80 or 90% pick rate, you would be like, okay, we should take this one character down a notch. But since there's only 28 characters in Overwatch, there are going to be 1, 2, or 3 that are going to be applicable more than, you know, 2/3 of the time, just because, you know, there's only going to be so many combinations, and you're going to only have so many different kinds of things that can work. It's like in a fighting game, you can't make every single character balanced. Even if you made it to a point where it's almost like that, there's still going to be, you know, 4 or 6 characters that are used more than the other 30, just because that's just the way it's going to work, because the characters have to be different. So 1 or 2 or 3 or 5 of them are going to have a bit of an edge here and there, or be more consistent. And so that's kind of the same with Overwatch. There's only 28 characters, and there is only 3 shield tanks, and there's only 5 tanks overall. Well, 6 if you count Roadhog, I guess, who was really more of a DPS than a tank, but he can kind of tank for himself in a sense, and is used in triple tank. Triple tank was so powerful because of how much Ana could heal, and you could take advantage of how insanely strong Roadhog was, and he's arguably even stronger now than he was back in the triple tank days. So when it comes to nerfing D.Va and Zen, I think that's you know, a little bit too precautionary on Blizzard's front, because they're just looking at the pick rates in Overwatch League and seeing that as a problem. But I think both of those characters will still be okay. But still, we still need more shield tanks in this game. Brigitte, a lot of people thought was going to be a tank. It makes sense more so that she's not, because, you know, she's a small character. You're not going to have a tiny tank rolling around, because she's not going to be able to block much damage with that little shield. But she's the first healer tank hybrid. We have, you know, Soldier, who's a DPS who can also heal. Roadhog is a DPS who can also heal, but only himself. We have Zen, who's a healer but can also output a ton of damage, arguably more than a lot of the DPS characters, which a lot of people played inconsistently. But and then you have Symmetra, who's a quote-unquote support character that can't heal. But now we have Brigitte, who is a healer who can also kind of tank for herself with her shield, CCing people, as well as whipping them away with her whip shot, and granting armor with a little bit of more, you know, sustain there. So that is really nice, and I think Brigitte is going to help tanks overall. But I do think she's going to be more useful in matchmaking than she is going to be in like Overwatch League. I don't know how high her pick rate is going to be, you know, if at all. Maybe on like 1 or 2 maps, I can definitely see that being a thing, just 1 or 2. But she synergizes very well with slow-moving death volley compositions, and that is nice, and that definitely will help. And I love playing Brigitte, by the way. She's super fun, and definitely Reinhardt's like best friend right now because of what she can do to heal him, block a little damage for him, whip a Winston that's trying to dive him, bash a McCree that's going to flashbang him, or bash the enemy Reinhardt so that he can hammer down. Just tons of synergy with that duo. That is nice, but we just need more shield tanks in this game. The instances where Winston can be used in matchmaking is few and far between. I like using Winston. I wish I could use him more, but you need more coordination. Whether you have communication or not, you need the coordination. Where people just know how to play with a Winston and take advantage of his strengths and to mitigate his flaws by, you know, defense matrixing his landing, or, you know, healing him when he needs it, or, you know, going in with him with your Genji or your Tracer, or hell, even a Moira could go in there and possibly finish off a kill that Winston has initiated. But you don't see a ton of that in matchmaking. And well, especially with the Sombra buff, that hurts Reinhardt and Orisa more so than any other character, because without shields, those characters are big, huge, fat sitting ducks that can't output a ton of damage without a ton of risk to themselves when it comes to Reinhardt's situation, especially with Pin, the hardest, you know, move in the game to use efficiently, and definitely the highest risk play to do in the game. But these characters just need a bit more love. We don't want a triple tank meta. We don't need another healer that can prop up tanks more, but Brigitte is definitely a fun little niche of granting armor as well as a little bit of healing. She won't heal as much as any of the healers innately, but obviously if everyone has armor, that can be, you know, more effective in certain situations to where she doesn't need to heal as much because they aren't taking health damage, just armor damage. Which, you know, mitigates incoming damage more so than shields or health. But we need to give these tanks a bit more love. The Sombra buff, mega buff, really hurt all of the tanks. The Reinhardt or the Reaper buff hurt all of the tanks. The Mei is okay. I think that's a fine change. It's not going to be a huge thing right now. Obviously, if you buff Mei too much, you will become an absolute must pick and rule the world, and nobody wants that, because I would rather get hacked than frozen. But Reinhardt getting hacked is just too easy with Sombra, and we just need a new shield tank in the game that is more mobile than Orisa and less vulnerable than Reinhardt. And I'm not going to pretend that I know how to design a character like that. You know, the Blizzard team is obviously the most qualified group of people to do that. But we need a new shield tank because, you know, Orisa is fine in some situations, Ryan is fine in some situations, but neither of them can be super duper consistent to a certain point. To where Orisa, I'm not going to be running her on attack a ton. I can sometimes, but I'm running Ryan a lot more on attack. I'm having more success with him in this season than I ever have before. But with there being more tools out there nowadays to combat Reinhardt than ever before, even though he was already in a terrible place. And yes, this does have to do with the way that the maps are working, how wide open a lot of the maps are, how vertical a lot of the maps are. You know, if everything was like Lijiang Control Center, we wouldn't be having discussions about how weak Ryan can be, because him and Zarya are really good on that map. But, you know, when it comes to almost all the other maps that are much bigger and wide open, Ryan is more vulnerable and can be more easily exploited. And tanks are just getting hurt real hard in this game. We don't want the triple tank meta to come back, even though it can be used quite easily and efficiently at certain levels, even into the Overwatch League a couple of times a week, but never to a point where anybody has to worry about anything. but tanks are just in a really bad spot right now. And it doesn't help that they're the least picked out of all of the categories. Diva, very popular, yes. I'm a Diva main myself, but you need a shield tank, and nobody wants to play them for a variety of reasons. So they need a little bit more help, and we need another shield tank in this game because tanks as a whole ain't looking too good right now.